Hello, Dennis McMahon, Green Business Strategy Marketing. We go out, we talk to developers, we talk to architects, and the primary issue with going green, if you like, at the moment is the concern that they will cost themselves more or narrow their margins because their competitors aren't doing so. If everybody was to incorporate a minimum level of greening of their building, if you can put it that way, then obviously if there's a cost increase, there's a cost increase for everybody. So that sort of, if you like, narrows the problem. The other issue that I find is that a lot of the talk is about new buildings, but when you look at the built environment and the inefficiencies, primarily it's in the existing stock. And there's not a great deal of talk about any incentives or otherwise to do anything about that. I'm just sort of throwing it to the panel and to the group, really. If Malaysia was serious in meeting the stated 40% reduction in CO2s by 2020, and the built environment does absorb a lot of that, what would be the view if tomorrow the minimum standards for new buildings were raised to, let's say, silver rating, GBI, if the minimum standards for energy efficiency in existing stock was raised, within 2 years you had to do so, and there were incentives, significant and real incentives, as well as significant sticks for those who didn't comply, what's the view of the panel if that was to be a mandated approach by the government?
You understand what he says? Now, I think the two things he mentioned, one is market forces suggest that developers are not going into more green feature because of the fear of narrow margin, and because the competition is not having to abide by base, they're able to sell cheaper. So your price out of the market is essentially one. So what you are proposing is perhaps there might be some legislation or some invisible force out there that says all of you must comply. So if everyone sells Mercedes, then this is the only car you can buy, right? One. I think the second thing you mentioned is incentive.
Well, sticks and carrots for both new buildings as well as for existing stock.
Absolutely. I have some answers to what you propose. That's why I'm the president of REHDA. But I'll probably leave it to the lesser mortals to say that.
I mean, maybe I can kick it off. I think that would be a great idea because the country would save a lot of money in not needing new power plants. And that money could be used immediately to reduce taxes, to give the money back to people that might need to spend a little bit more on new buildings, but actually they'll recover that money in the operational phase of running these new buildings. So the net effect would be that the country would be better off in having a greener growth with more money, both at government level and at people's level. We would as well reduce the need for any additional water pipes from other states to Selangor or other parts of Malaysia, which, as I mentioned this morning, will cost the country 3.9 billion Malaysian ringgit. So there would be loads and loads of savings all over the place because we would be able to cope with the existing infrastructure in terms of supply of water and supply of electricity, and it would make Malaysia much more competitive. I actually see a big competitiveness issue coming up because Malaysia so far has had the luxury of being extremely inefficient because of cheap electricity and water. Thailand, Philippines, those countries pay the real dollar for electricity, for fuel, for water, and my friend who is working in these countries implementing energy efficiency initiatives, he is telling me that their manufacturing sector has already done the stuff that Malaysian businesses are still not even considering because they don't feel the ROI is short-term enough. So Malaysia is going to run up into some serious trouble unless it puts pressure on efficiency with serious carrot and stick very, very fast. At the moment we have a dream of 40% reduction in 2020, and this is based on economic growth. it's not absolute 40% reduction. We've got a lot of top-down goodwill, some incentives, but bottom-up, nothing is moving or little is moving because everything is so cheap and the